Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting week of Fantasy Fanline. I'm your host, Greg Scalera. We are the only fantasy football call-in show putting you on the air with industry experts each and every week. If you're here for the first time, welcome to our show. If you're a returning listener, viewer, caller, welcome back. I hope to have you participate with us today. Our phone lines will be open for the entire hour. You can dial in 618-FANLINE for a chance to talk with me and our expert guests, who I'll be introducing in just a minute here. We are live for the next hour, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, each and every Saturday for the entire season. You can catch us YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you're watching us right now. We'll be here every week. You can find us the next day on your favorite podcast platform and audio format. Pretty much wherever you want to find us, you can find us, whether you're watching, listening, just have us on in the background while you're working out, taking a drive. We are here for you all fantasy season long. So subscribe and hit the bell. Every platform we are at Fantasy Fanline, all across social media, everywhere you want to find us. You can visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of upcoming guests and to submit a question to our mailbag if you can't join us live. We'll be taking some of those questions today from this past week. If you like what you hear, you can support us by telling a friend to tune in, leaving a review wherever you listen to us, and just generally getting the word out. We're a new independent show, and we rely on your support to help us grow. We are a work in progress, and we hope you come along for the ride with us. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring in today's guest. I'm going to put him up on the screen here. We got Craig Schmucker. Craig is joining us. He's a contributor to Overtime Heroics. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Dude, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. Oh, Craig, you are muted. I apologize. I did that. That was my fault. I set you up for failure.
That's
Whatever
all right.
You were about to just say looked important.
It was great. Don't worry. It won't
again.
be as good this time, but it was great that time.
Oh, well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Craig, how are you, man?
But I'm doing good, man. Just been watching the LSU game. They're actually playing well today, so that's nice. Having a couple beers and ready to talk
knock on wood,
football.
Man. If things go south from here, it's your fault. You said
it probably is. I was
Well,
expecting it to go bad in the first place, so it won't hurt me too bad.
So anything after this is just gravy.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I'm glad to have you with us. I'm a long time, well, not long time, but probably about half a year reader, subscriber to the content over on Overtime Heroics. You do some great work over there. You guys, I think, just launched your podcast, right, this season?
Yeah, we did this season. It's still growing small right now, but of course we're going to keep working on it, trying to get it better and grow the platform.
Why don't you take a minute to give the listeners kind of a plug of everything you got going on, the articles that you write, the podcast content you put out. You're a regular content creator, one of my favorite follows on Twitter.
Thanks,
let the people know where to find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, you can find me at ff_schmuck, as it says down here. And then all my content's on Overtime Heroics, www.overtimeheroics.net. And I write fantasy football content, and also we do a weekly football podcast, and then we try to do a fantasy podcast weekly too, but sometimes we don't get around to it because we talk too much on the other one. So you can find that on YouTube as well, Overtime Heroics.
All football info is good football info when you're making fantasy football decisions. So whether you're a fan of the game or fan of the game about the game, check out everything Craig is doing. It's all great content. Can't recommend him enough. Dude, the people are stoked to have you today. We got this comment that came in from YouTube, from Clock Management. Craig is awesome. Can't wait. Cannot agree more, Clock Management. That's why he's on the show today with us.
Appreciate that, Justin. He's actually got a really good podcast on here too, Clock Management Fantasy Football, if you want to check him out.
Maybe we'll get him on the show later this year, and you can pop in and leave a comment about how awesome he is on YouTube, and we'll bring the cycle all the way around. Well, we got a lot to talk about here, man, heading into week 6, and Our phone lines are open starting now, 618-FANLINE. You can actually pick up your phone, give us a call, and join the show. You will be on the air with me and Craig, and we'll be talking live. Any questions you got, start-sit questions, trades, waivers, we're here for all your needs. If you want to just call and shoot the breeze, bring up a topic in your league. We've had some questions in recent weeks about kind of ethical questions about fantasy football, things that are going down in people's leagues, and they turn to us as a tiebreaker. anything you need, we're here to talk fantasy for the next hour. Well, 55 minutes at this point, but
Yeah.
if you want to give us a call, you can do so. In the meantime, we're going to take some questions we got in advance. We do have a mailbag on our website. For those of you who can't join us live, you can go ahead and write into us, or you can leave us a comment wherever you're watching us right now, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. It all comes to us through the magic of technology, and we will see it, and we will acknowledge your, oh, you know what? We actually have a question coming in from a caller right now. So before we take the mailbag,
awesome.
we're going to bring somebody on the show with us. They should be with us in just a minute here. It's exciting. Five and a half minutes in might be a new record. This takes a minute sometimes. I should bring like a queue of jokes to tell while we're waiting. Hey caller, if you are on the line, you are on the show with us on Fantasy Fanline. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Horseshoe Devotee from the Jersey Shore.
Horseshoe Devotee. Welcome to the show, buddy. Horse called us in week 1, and we haven't heard from him since. I've been looking forward to his return.
Well, I didn't know that we would have two people with rhyming first names. That was a big selling point for me.
Greg
so
and Craig. I should have made more of a big deal about that in the advertisements for this week.
I didn't even think about it, honestly. Even though Craig, half the time people call me Greg whenever I call them on the phone. They're like, oh, Greg. And I'm like, no, Craig. And then eventually I just go with it.
Vice versa here.
Craig, your Tigers, they look really inspired right now. They're playing for Coach O.
They said Damone Clark had that team meeting with everybody, and he's a big deal on the defense. So they actually look good today. I'm pretty surprised after what they put up last week with Kentucky. It was really bad.
Yeah. Well, I have a trade question for you guys.
Shoot.
This question might be a little long-winded, but I kind of want to see where you guys stand on this.
We have plenty of time, Horse.
But I'm gonna focus specifically on my one team that I really think is, if not the best team in the league, it's second best. Pretty stacked at wide receiver. I have Justin Herbert, but the issue I have right now is McCaffrey and Montgomery both on IR. And I don't know if you guys saw the breaking news on McCaffrey, but
yeah,
it's looking like it's going to be a few more weeks. Also have Kittle on IR.
Man,
I was tough. Able to
Horse. Before we continue, who else is on your team so we know who to fade in the next couple of weeks, because they're all just going to get hurt, man.
So,
I think you're snake bit.
Well, the guy. So my receivers are Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf, and the savior of my team is Jamar Chase as my flex. It's a 2-flex league, so I'm also Melvin Gordon was my other flex. And I picked up Chuba Hubbard, when McCaffrey went down. I also have Dalton Schultz. He's been filling in for me at tight end, and he's having a great start of the year. So I'm kind of looking to trade Schultz or Kittle once he gets back. Kind of wanted to see who I should be targeting for each of those guys, and what the floor of the worst running back, because running backs where I need depth. Right now I'm going with, backup running backs like Singletary and Hubbard, or Melvin Gordon, who's, Melvin Gordon. So I really need some depth at running back. I don't really need Schultz and Kittle. Kind of want to know who I should be targeting. And what the floor of a running back I should be targeting for either of those guys is.
Well, this is a really great kind of fantasy football theory question, trade theory question, because you have the classic name value guy in George Kittle versus the guy who's actually breaking out this year, and you're kind of wondering which one of those should you move and which one can you get more value for. Craig, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you kind of give your thoughts here.
You can definitely get more value for Kittle just because name value in general. But if you're trading a guy like Schultz, maybe try for maybe somebody like Fournette if you could get that. I mean, some people still don't believe that he's actually a thing, and it seems like this year he is. Is this Dynasty League or a redraft league?
No, this is a redraft league.
Okay, a redraft league. Yeah, I mean, you could go for somebody like Fournette possibly, or even like a Chase Edmonds with Dalton Schultz. I mean, this week I don't really trust Chase Edmonds, but going forward, he's got the PPR floor. So that's the type of guy I'd be looking for. Somebody that is not like super huge name value with Schultz, but is playing well. And then with Kittle, I'd want more. I'd want let's say you'd probably have to wait for him to come back, but you could probably trade him for a underproducing. Let's see, who's a guy that's not really maybe like a Joe Mixon.
That's exactly who I was going to suggest.
Joe Mixon's he's going to get the volume, and as long as he's healthy, he's the guy on that team, and he'd be the guy I'm targeting with Kittle for sure.
Look, I think people are worried about Joe Mixon because he has burned us in the recent history with injuries, and I don't think we're in that situation this year, but it's just enough to kind of trigger those memories of people who were burned by him in years past. I think Mixon's going to come back and be a stud the rest of the way. He's going to get a ton of value on the Bengals. It's going to be him. P. Ryan already was not much of a factor, and he is, I believe, also banged up. Mixon is the guy I would look at if you're looking to move Kittle. And I assume you're looking to do it soon and cover the next couple of weeks. But I think Mixon is ready to go as soon as this weekend. Injury reports, I think, have been pretty positive on him.
Well, if I'm going to move, it's kind of because I have the injuries at multiple positions. It's kind of a really fine line I'm walking here because I really don't want to wait on picking up a running back. And, if I don't want to wait, then I have to really look at trading Schultz and seeing what's in the waiver wire, which, I mean, I'm not going to find another Schultz.
No.
On the other hand, I don't want to trade Kittle now and not get the value that I should be getting for a Kittle. I don't want someone to say, well, if I'm eating that for a few weeks, you're not getting Joe Mixon. You're getting, I don't know, some trash, Melvin Gordon type.
I think that
I don't know what Melvin Gordon did to me that I've just been trashing him for the last 5 minutes.
I mean, also maybe you can move Demont for like a guy like Josh Jacobs who hasn't really performed well, and I mean, they might want him when he comes back because when he's on the field, is putting up way more points than Jacobs, and then you don't have to worry about having that on your IR spot. You'll have a running back. You won't have to get rid of either tight end.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far down the running back rankings. If David Montgomery was going to be out for a longer period of time, I think I wouldn't mind that move. But I'm hearing it's probably closer to like a 2-week, 3-week wait for Montgomery. I don't think that the George Kittle concerns stop at the injury, though. I had my concerns with him kind of just in the opening weeks of the season. I mean, the last time we saw great numbers, difference-making numbers out of George Kittle to justify the kind of third-round draft pick was 2018, 2017, 2018. And that was, not just he was younger, but that was also pre-Debo. That was pre-Ayuk. I mean, he was the only show in town when he was carrying fantasy managers. And I think even when he comes back, that's not what you're going to get. So I think that I would be willing, Horse, to sell him at kind of 75 cents on the dollar. If you don't think you can get a Joe Mixon, if you don't want to package him with like a lower running back, maybe try to do something straight up for like a Daryl Henderson, who I love the rest of the way.
Great this year. Yeah.
I think he's going to win people leagues over the second half of the year. He's getting a ton of volume on one of the best offenses in the league. And I think that's a deal you could realistically make, maybe throw in a couple of add-ons. But I would look at Henderson or Mixon for Kittle. And I think that's the move I would make. I think I would hang on to Schultz and just ride the value production.
I do also have the option of not making a trade, period. It's more of, do you see any value in the guys that I have right now?
So what did you say? You said your wide receivers look great, and then you got Hubbard at running back until CMC comes back, and he's going to probably put you up at least like 10 points a game, I would think. And then
I have Gordon.
Is this full PPR?
Gordon,
did
and
you say?
I have Singletary.
Gordon
It is a PPR.
Okay.
See, I might make a move for another running back, honestly, because it's one tight end. So if you have Schultz for most weeks, then you'll just have to replace him for 1 week. And then if you get a guy like Mixon and put him in over like Melvin Gordon, who's sharing time with Javonte Williams, that's going to get you a lot more points on a weekly basis and a much higher ceiling.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. In a 2 running back starting roster and full PPR, I do devalue the position a little bit more than I would in half point or standard, just because I think you still need a rock solid RB1 every week. But that RB2 position on a full PPR team, I think there's a lot of guys that you can kind of get away with swapping in there and hoping for a couple of catches out of the backfield. Like a Nyheim Hines, maybe even like a Brandon Bolden in the right matchup, a Kenny Gainwell. That's why we have PPR, right, to make those kind of lower tier running backs a little more relevant. But I don't know that I would roll with Chuba as kind of my most reliable option for a couple of weeks. I think that even when you get Kittle back, that extra value that you have at tight end sitting on your bench, whether it's Kittle or Schultz, is going to be burning a hole in your pocket anyway. Probably you can get more for Kittle once he comes back, but maybe not enough to justify struggling through the running back position for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then also you don't have to worry about starting Kittle over Schultz, and then Schultz goes off, and you don't ever want to bench Kittle. And if Kittle comes back and he's not 100%, then he's really not going to do much for you, and he'll probably be in your starting lineup most weeks.
Yeah, I wouldn't deal with the headache if I were you.
I appreciate it. I think I needed to hear someone tell me that I can trade George Kittle.
For sure.
I almost feel like I needed to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be in the same boat as you.
You're not going to get the value that you drafted him at, but I think that you're still going to get better than the value that he would return for the rest of the year if you kept him. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. Really loving the show.
Thanks for calling in, man.
Yeah, thanks for calling, man. Hope to hear from you again in the future. All right, man. Have a good one. So, there you go. One call in the books. That was fun. That was a great question. I think a lot of people are probably having that itch right now. If you're rostering a George Kittle or even like a TJ Hawkinson, a lot of those bigger guys not necessarily performing up to standards. And I'm going to take this opportunity to segue into, I think, kind of a really relevant question here. We got a question in from the mailbag on fantasyfanline.com. If you were to redraft today for rest of season, does Darren Waller still go in the second round from Isabella in California? So while we're talking about these kind of big difference-making tight ends, what you pay up for in those top rounds is for a positional advantage over your opponent each and every week. He came out hot in week 1, like 19 targets, 10 catches. And after that, he's been kind of middle of the road, which is not what you paid up for. Craig, where do you land on this question? I assume she's asking this from a point of view of should I trade him? And, is he going to rebound? Is he still kind of that top tier guy rest of season?
I think he'll rebound. I think he must just be in a slump. He's that talented, and he's their main target on that team. I think a little bit of it's been Ruggs and Renfrow have kind of emerged a little bit and been playing a little bit better. So they have other like ancillary weapons outside of Darren Waller. And but I don't think at this point that if we were to do a draft, like a redraft draft right now, he would go in the second round. He'd probably still go in like the third round just because he's Darren Waller. But I think that he can rebound and get you the value the rest of the season. And I think that right now with all the high-end RBs that are injured and stuff, if we did a redraft today, obviously people would be grabbing RBs early because there's not as many of them.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. He and George Kittle, and the reason I segued into this question from the previous question is because they were both kind of going at that 2-3 turn in drafts. And I think that they were not viewed in the same tier as Travis Kelce, but they did have their own kind of 1B tier before you got into like the Mark Andrews, the Kyle Pitts, kind of tier 3, I guess you would call it. And I think if I was redrafting today, I would probably put Waller and Kittle closer to that same tier as Andrews and Pitts, as I just mentioned. I don't necessarily think that they're differentiators at the position on a regular basis anymore. Like you said, I think we've seen some change in the target distribution in Las Vegas with getting the wide receivers more involved. They have just never been a factor over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and
not at all.
That's one of the more pass-happy teams, I think, in recent history. Carr has been one of the only kind of 4,000-plus passing yards guys consistently. I think 3 years in a row now. He's on a list of maybe 5 guys who have done it, and it's just all been going to Waller, and that's just not how that offense is set up anymore. And we don't need to get into the off-the-field stuff happening on the Raiders right now, but
yeah, it's too much to get into. And
it's
then
not
also
going to make the offense any better.
And then you also have guys like Dawson Knox that have come out and played well, and Dalton Schultz, like we talked about it just a minute ago. So people would be more comfortable going tight end a little bit later too.
Yep, agreed. So, like I said, they're not going to not be good tight ends moving forward. Waller is never just going to disappear from a game. He's got a good floor. He's got probably more upside than anybody but Travis Kelce, and that's why he's your number 2. I just think that tier gap is a little wider from 1 to 2 than it was in preseason. And you don't draft and you don't put that kind of value on a tight end if they're not going to be a consistent difference maker for you. So great question. Don't jump ship on Waller. Don't sell him for pennies on the dollar. But I don't think he's that kind of second round talent anymore moving forward. So let's get to our next question here from the mailbag. Just a reminder, our line is open, 618 Fanline. We have one great call already. If anyone else wants to call in and chat with us, we are here for the next 40 minutes or so. This is a nice strategy question coming in from Big Pete in Maryland. And I hear Big Pete, and I think of the old-timey Disney villain. Well, I don't know. He was like a bear or a cat, whatever he was.
The one on Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, the old Mickey Mouse villain. So
he's on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, too. So
there you go. Yeah,
he's a lot nicer on that show, though.
Oh, good. Yeah. He's made a lot of personal growth over the years. He got into fantasy football, moved to Maryland.
He probably got a little bit of therapy or something. He had a lot going on back then, so
a lot of issues to work through. It's a different time than it used to be, man. But he is wondering what our favorite defense is to grab off of waivers and stash now for next week. So good looking ahead, Big Pete in Maryland. Nice of you to put aside your grudge with Mickey and his friends to kind of get serious about fantasy football and right into Fantasy Fanline. Craig, what do you think? Who are you looking at?
I'm going with the Saints. They're 52% owned in ESPN leagues. They're the number 3 defense going into this week, and they have 9 interceptions on the season. And they're playing against a Seahawks team that lost Chris Carson and Russell Wilson. So there's not really much more I have to say about that. Besides, you're going against a backup quarterback, a backup running back. They have good weapons, but also, the Saints have 9 interceptions on the season already. That's a lot of interceptions already.
The Saints are the answer. They were my number 1 choice for this too. They're on bye right now, so they're probably on your waiver wire unless anybody's stashing them, or if you play in like a 2-defense league, which I have done once, and it was terrible.
A 2-defense league?
Listen, I was new to the game.
Most people don't want 1 defense. What are y'all doing over there?
I didn't set up the format. It was atrocious. We quickly moved on from our mistakes.
That is awful.
This was also a league that I believe we had a head coach position once, and you would just get 10 points if your team won. But what point was I making? Oh, they're probably on your waiver wire. The Saints are this week, unless somebody held them through the bye. They're the number 2 defense on the year so far. Nobody's scared of Geno Smith and the Seahawks coming into town next week. Grab the Saints if they're available. I will give you another one. The Patriots are playing the Cowboys this week, so they were probably dropped. The Cowboys offense looks incredible, and I would not blame anybody for being afraid to start New England.
That was my other one that I have too. It was between them, the Patriots, the Cardinals possibly, and the Panthers, but the Saints were the easy choice.
Yep. New England has the Jets next week, and the Cardinals, I believe, has Houston. So all 3 of those
are all good
great
ones.
options. Yeah. So some weeks, it's really slim pickings, and there's not much doing. This week, I think you have plenty of choices. So if you have an open bench spot, weekly reminder to everybody, if you have anyone who you can move to your IR and kind of look ahead and stash somebody for next week, those are some good options, so you don't have to fight with everybody on waivers. So let's move on to our next question from Bart in Pennsylvania, courtesy of our mailbag. Is Kenny G droppable at this point? Kenny G, the saxophone player, I would not drop him from your fantasy orchestra. Kenny Gainwell, probably droppable. Kenny Galladay, who I assume this is a reference to, possibly. Craig, what do you think?
I don't think so. He's got 3 double-digit point games, and he was drafted his ADP was around 74. So you weren't expecting huge things from him right out the gate anyways. He's injured right now, but when he comes back, he's probably still the number one on the offense. Well, him and Sterling Shepard, but Kadarius Toney's broken out too. I still don't like getting rid of a guy that has as much talent as Kenny Galladay, especially because what are you going to be dropping him for on the waiver wire? There's not going to be a lot.
That's what I was going to ask you. Let's play a little name game and see if there's anybody out there. I mean, I feel like if you're in a really shallow league, you have no IR slot. He's only going to be out a couple weeks, but if you have to move him to start somebody, I mean, would you rather have any of the Cardinals wide receivers, Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk? Probably not, right?
I mean, Rondale Moore, maybe, but yeah. I still don't. With them getting Zach Ertz, probably not, because Zach Ertz is going to take up a lot of that intermediate game. I mean, he's still a really good tight end.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more who might be kind of widely available on waivers. Michael Gallup coming back relatively soon from injury, Dallas Cowboys.
I love Michael Gallup as a talent, but that offense just isn't throwing as much. And when you have Dalton Schultz, who's broken out, you got CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and you have Pollard getting some catches too. I don't see there being enough volume for me to drop Kenny Galladay for Michael Gallup.
Okay, two more. Hunter Renfrow.
No, probably not. I mean, I think I'd rather wait Kenny Galladay out and see what he can do the rest of the season.
Renfrow, I think if you're desperate for a starter this week or next week, full PPR.
It made me think a little bit.
Maybe. Yeah.
But there's got to be somebody else on your roster that, unless you have like just shallow rosters, that you'd be able to drop.
Yeah. This is all kind of conditional on format, because I think there are some guys where I would say no matter what your format, no matter what your situation, hold them. I don't think Kenny Galladay makes that list for me, but I would not drop him unless I had to. If
you had to drop him, that would mean you had better options to start already anyway. So
that's true.
I don't think you'd have to drop him for another wide receiver.
Last option I'll give you, because he's getting a lot of buzz this week, is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
No, I just still don't see it with him. I mean, on that offense, he could be the number one receiver because they just don't really have anybody. They got like Khalif Raymond and Quintez Cephas is hurt. So, but I don't really want to buy into the Detroit Lions offense.
Same. I understand the question here. I understand the concern about Kenny Galladay. I mean, really, he was getting some hype coming into the season because of his talent, like you mentioned, but also the Giants paid him a lot of money to presumably come in and get a lot of targets. And, it was kind of a stacked receiving room with him and Sterling Shepard, and kind of the reason people didn't understand the Kadarius Toney pick in the NFL draft was because there didn't really seem to be a need there. But that's nothing new, for the Giants. I mean, they took Barkley a few years ago when they were not a running back away from being a contender. So
Toney did ball out, though, last week.
Dude, I think that the people who were
yards on, 10 receptions? And
he's legit, man.
He can move. Like, the way he moves his body is not typical of a normal human being. Like, that, there was like 3 guys around him at one point. It took him like 10 seconds to tackle him. I don't know what he was doing. He was just back and forth.
Look, for those of you kind of more casual, followers of the game who may not do much scouting on like the college level or the professional level, you will see things like that at the college level, and those are the people who go on to be average in the NFL.
That's what I expected too.
Yeah, when you see people start to look extraordinary at the NFL level with playing with the best athletes in the world, that's when you've got something special. And a lot of people are making the comparisons to Odell Beckham's breakout year on the Giants, his rookie season. He came in kind of hurt, not getting a lot of attention in preseason because of the injury, and then he came in hot, once he was active. And Sterling Shepard is kind of the perfect parallel to Victor Cruz at the time, right? Kind of the steady, reliable second wide receiver option who had been producing. I don't know where Kenny Galladay fits into that metaphor.
That makes it a little harder, but...
Yeah, I think it's going to be... I think Toney's going to make an impact on Kenny Galladay's target share when he comes back. He's just been too good to not demand targets.
They have to start getting him the ball more. I mean, because once you get him in space, they'll probably use him in the screen game more. Yeah. Slayton's probably going to lose snaps to him. I know Slayton's mostly outside receiver, and Toney worked in the slot a lot, but they're going to get him on the field whichever way they can.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody was holding Slayton in the hopes that he would find his way to the top of an injured wide receiver corpse, but I don't think it's going to happen for Slayton. Kenny G, final answer, would not drop unless I had to, but if I had to, I don't think I'd lose sleep over it. I just don't know what the future holds for the target share there. But good question, Bart. Good luck, and I hope.
And also,
follow your heart.
You could probably try to trade him off his name value, because some people. That's me,
true.
will still think that he's okay, and you could probably get a decent wide receiver for him.
Yeah, he'd be a nice add-on to a package deal if you're looking to make a move. There's, people get turned off when you throw in the bench fodder on your team, but if you tack on a guy like Kenny G with some potential upside, there's a path where he's a relevant kind of high wide receiver 3 rest of the way. I think probably a little more enticing than if you were to throw in like a Christian Kirk or somebody who you picked up for free a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And I just said him because we just recently discussed him. No offense to Christian Kirk. He's a fine player, but not somebody who's going to move the needle on a trade the way that a Kenny G probably would. Speaking of OBJ, this was an interesting question coming in from Sarah in New York. Not necessarily a fantasy football question, but and I'm not surprised that it's coming in from New York, but do you think Odell Beckham Jr. will go into the Hall of Fame? Craig, what do you think?
It's a tough one for sure. He's definitely not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's extremely talented, one of the most talented wide receivers we've seen play. You saw it from his first 3 seasons. He was on a Hall of Fame pace easily after the first 3 seasons, but then he's been banged up since then. He's had 5,000-yard receiving seasons, and 3 Pro Bowls. So maybe like 1 or 2 more like really good seasons, and he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And even if he doesn't get that, he might make it. But I think if he gets 2 more, he's kind of solidified himself and into it.
That's possible. I'll expand on that in a second, but I see we have another call coming in. This person may want to weigh in on our question, or they may have their own question. We will see what happens. Hey, caller, welcome to Fantasy Fanline. You are on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's going on? Sanj from New Jersey. How you guys doing today?
What's up, Sanj from New Jersey? Thanks for calling,
Doing
man.
great, man.
Are you calling to weigh in on this Odell Beckham question, or do you have a question of your own?
Unfortunately, I'm not listening. I just left urgent care for an ear infection, but I figured I'd give you a ring.
Oh,
I'll check
appreciate
it out
the call. I hope you can hear us through your ear infection, man.
Yeah, real funny.
Well, why don't you give us your question, and then we'll let you weigh in on the question we're discussing. As a resident of New Jersey, you might have some opinions, but why don't you go first?
Sounds good. I was just curious on what you guys think about Khalil Herbert tomorrow. How you think he's going to play? Where you think he's going to finish? If he's worth a start.
We actually had a
Pretty
question
simple,
similar
but
to this.
Why don't you go ahead first, Craig?
We had a question on starting him or Edmonds, and I picked Khalil Herbert because, Herbert, he's going to be the one getting on, and Green Bay's run defense is decent, but he's going to be getting probably the only other guy they really have is Ryan Nall. And nobody even knows that guy. So, Herbert got 18 carries for 75 yards in the last game. He kind of outperformed Damian Williams. And I'd love to see him in a feature role this week. And they're going to have to score points. So hopefully he'll get some goal line carries too. He gets you a touchdown, and he's going to finish probably RB2 or so is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, spoiler alert for our Chase Edmonds question. I also picked Khalil Herbert in that equation. For those of you who are not aware, he is expected to be the starting running back for my Chicago Bears this week. I am a huge Bears fan. Sanch, you know that. I assume that's why you called in. Listen, Herbert got a lot of work last week. I was not taking that as an indication that he was going to get the majority or even a significant touch share moving forward. I think it was more a product of the situation, but he looked really good with the touches that he got. He ran great. I think the Bears were excited in what they have in him. It's not, a positive game script expected against the Packers. As much as it pains me to say that, I wish I could sit here and tell you that they're going to play with a lead the whole game and run out the clock. But if there's a way to keep Aaron Rodgers at bay, it is to play keep away and try to run the ball and run the clock down. We have seen that for years with kind of the more high octane passing offenses. That's how people try to beat Patrick Mahomes. That's how you beat Lamar Jackson. You keep the ball out of their star quarterback's hands, and you do that on the ground. So Justin Fields has not been throwing the ball a ton the last couple of weeks. They've really been leaning on a better than average defense and a better than expected run game because that offensive line sucks. So
it's real bad.
I am more surprised than anybody that they're getting decent rushing production. But I think that is partially a product of Justin Fields being a mobile quarterback. You do see that open things up for running backs on teams with rushing quarterbacks because a little harder to predict where they're going with the rock. But look, man, if Herbert is on your team and you need a start at running back, no fear from me, the resident Bears fan on the show, rolling him out as your RB2. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think he's got a solid floor. He's going to get all the touches he can handle. I don't think that they're going to lean on Justin Fields to keep up with Aaron Rodgers.
No.
If it gets away from them early, there's a chance he disappears in the run game, but he's a decent enough pass catcher. It's not the days of Tariq Cohen who's going to come out and steal all those passing downs. I think expectations are good for Herbert. No concern about starting him against the Packers.
Yeah, because you're not going to really pull him off the field at that point either. Because, like I said, Ryan, no. Is he that much of better of a pass catcher than Khalil Herbert? Probably not.
I can assure you he is not. That doesn't mean that's not going to stop Matt Nagy from using him that way.
Nagy's going to Nagy all the time.
Conventional coaching is not always his bag, but if they want the best chance to win, I think they're going to have to try to keep the ball on the ground, limit the potential mistakes of Justin Fields. I love him as a talent, Fields, but he's still a rookie. He's still growing. He's in his third start, his fourth start in the league. I don't think they want him to go pass for pass with Aaron Rodgers. Just not a recipe for success. Keep the ball on the ground. Herbert looked good last week. I think if he came out and put up a stinker in his opportunities last week, they might be a little more concerned to trust him, but he didn't do that. So if you grabbed him, which Sanch you did, I think you should feel confident.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember watching a few preseason games, and he looked pretty solid. He had a nice, 20-yard touchdown run. He was looking good. And he was a dynasty stash for sure, but now the opportunity's there. So. And I'm assuming if you took him over Chase Edmonds, you're both playing him over Melvin Gordon tomorrow, correct?
100%.
I am.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning to. I was just, I need some reassurance on that one. I appreciate you guys helping me out. Heard you have a question for me now, you said?
Yeah, Sanch, we were just discussing a mailbag question from Sarah in New York, who is wondering if we think Odell Beckham Jr. will go into the Hall of Fame.
If he had Eli his whole career, yeah, but he's washed. He's not. No way. Come on.
Yeah,
Dumb question. Sorry, Sarah.
I'm inclined to agree with you, man. We'll let you go so you make it home safe and treat that ear infection, but we will expand a little more on our Odell Beckham discussion after you hang up. Dude,
Thanks
always
for the
a
call,
pleasure.
Man.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah, no problem. Love this show. I'll be calling soon again next week.
Please do, Sanch.
You guys are great.
Take it easy, man.
All right, take it easy. Hey.
How about that commitment? Calling in on his way out of the doctor's office, dealing with an ear infection. Getting back to the Odell Beckham question, did you want to kind of add anything else to that? I feel like we've
I just feel like I said, I think he needs just one or two more solid seasons. Maybe just hitting 1,000 yards is gonna be much easier in 17 games, anyways.
True.
So maybe another Pro Bowl. If they can make the Super Bowl this year, that'd be great. That's not as big I feel like it's not as big for positional players as it is for quarterbacks, because a lot of people put it on the quarterbacks if they won Super Bowls or not. But I think he could get there, but I don't think he's quite there yet. He's kind of on the fence for me.
It's a big debate. It's something that I've been hearing a lot as a resident of New Jersey for the past couple of years. I have a lot of Giants fans friends who fall on very extreme ends of the spectrum when it comes to this question, but was he a Hall of Fame talent at one point in his career? Yes. Does he have that kind of Hall of Fame highlight moment that we all remember? The catch. Yeah.
And it's in the Hall of Fame. The
catch itself.
In the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
They have a
picture of it. They have all of it in the Hall of Fame.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That was
so
one
technically
of those...
he's in the Hall of Fame already.
You go, Sarah. Happy to answer your question. You got to be more specific. Do we think he will go into the Hall of Fame?
He already is. Yeah.
I don't think he's had a Hall of Fame career, and I think that's an important distinction to make when you talk about talent versus production. The numbers just aren't there. He's at 496 career catches, just under 7,000 yards, 51 TDs over 8 seasons, 81 games started. Like you said, no Super Bowls. He only started one playoff game on the Giants in 2016, and they lost the NFC wild card.
Is that the yacht picture?
I believe so. Yep.
Oh man.
Man. He was on IR for the Browns 2 postseason games last year, so that does not count. He was not starting. He was selected 3 Pro Bowls, no All Pros. The only Hall of Fame wide receiver with less touchdowns is Drew Pearson right now, with 1,000 more yards and a Super Bowl, and that was in the 70s.
And another problem is, he got outproduced last week by Rashard Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who are like they're fine NFL players. I'm not taking anything away from either one of them, but they're not what Odell's supposed to be.
That's my concern when you say if he sticks around another couple of years, has a couple of great seasons. I just don't see a world where he has any great seasons left. I think
he definitely has to go to a more pass-happy team. We've seen kind of a resurgence from like AJ Green in the desert down there in Arizona. And if you get Odell maybe to, I don't know, the Raiders, to the Raiders,
there's a world where he's
even
not done and it's just chemistry or team structure. But on the Browns, I don't see it. Yeah.
He's going to have to get moved to be able to put up the numbers he needs to push himself over the fence for me.
Yeah, good question. Fun debate. David from New Jersey was next on our list with the Herbert versus Edmonds question, and we kind of killed two birds with one stone on that call. So look at us, man. We are having a productive hour.
We can just add on a little bit to it real quick.
Yeah, sure. If there's any numbers you want to drop.
So another reason I'm picking Herbert over Edmonds is a problem with Edmonds as well is because he's been questionable. Last week he was questionable all week and played through injury, and he only put up like 34 yards, like not many fantasy points. And this week he's playing a Browns defense who's very stout against the run. And also last week Eckler put up 5 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown on the Browns. But in the first 4 games, they only gave up 11 receptions and 103 yards to running backs.
Wow.
So that's just averaging like slightly over 25 yards a game and hardly any receptions. So that's what you're expecting from Edmonds. And it doesn't look like he's really – Edmonds isn't Austin Eckler. Not many players are. So I'm not expecting him to come into the game and put up those kind of numbers. And then he doesn't get any goal line work either. It's all James Conner. So even though he is a really good PPR play most weeks, I just don't see it this week.
I had a lot of hope for Edmonds as a value pick coming into the season, just because we didn't know how that usage was going to shake out. We didn't know if he'd be used as more of a bell cow. We suspected not, but there was a possibility, right? But that risk was baked into his draft price. So I like what he's doing for your team right now based on what you paid to get him, but I don't think he's a reliable running back too. It's probably not where you drafted him, maybe more as a flex, unless you got one of those kind of top tight ends. You might have had to take him as your 2, in which case I'm probably waiting for him to have a big game and hoping to package him up, maybe try to get somebody with more of a reliable workload. But I would not start him in this situation.
I kind of fell on the Connor side this offseason just because I knew he was going to get and I have an article out about it too. I knew he was going to get kind of the King and Drake role a little bit, which he's gotten a little less because Edmonds is a talented player and he's a really good pass catcher. So he got his pass catching work still, and he got a few more carries. And Connor, he's not great, but he's good enough, and he can get you those few yards you need when you get down near the goal line. He's a big guy. So, I see why they're using him down there. And Edmonds, I already knew he wasn't going to get the goal line work at the beginning, like before the season, just because I think before this year he has 1 goal line carry in his career. So,
yeah, there are very few guys built like Chase Edmonds who are used as goal line running backs, and he's not kind of in that group with like the Alvin Kamaras or, like you said, the Austin Ecklers. But those guys find ways to score. I don't think Chase Edmonds is on that list, so I would go with the more proven Khalil Herbert in this situation. Hey, Craig, are you still with me? It looks like your video froze here. Unless you're just really like seriously thinking about something, I think we might have lost your connection. So in the meantime, this is probably a good time to remind people that our phone line is open, 618 Fanline. Hey, Craig, you're back, man. I missed you.
I don't know what happened. I just went ahead and disconnected from my internet and connected back. But yeah, I think Connor and Edmonds can coexist as like flex play running backs. But if I have either one of them, I'm trying to package them and try and get something better.
Couldn't agree more. Let's move on to our next question here from the mailbag, fantasyfanline.com. This one came in from Jay in California. Jay wants to know, should Antonio Brown be viewed as the most valuable wide receiver on the Bucs moving forward? Big question. What do you think, Craig?
Man, he's averaging the most targets. He's got 8.4 targets per game, 5.8 receptions, 83.6 yards per game. He's leading in like every category. But the thing for me is, I think that they're all very valuable, and you don't really know who it's going to be week to week. So AB, I guess you could say he's the most valuable, but it could change in just a couple games just because Tom Brady's very good at dispersing the ball because he's got so many great wide receivers on the team. So I'd say I value them all kind of close. If it's redraft, I guess you should probably go AB. He's very talented and one of the best receivers we've ever seen play the game, and he seems like he is back to how he used to be. So if I had to take any of them right now, I'd probably take AB, but obviously in Dynasty, it's not that way.
I wonder what the action is based on the answer to this question, because it's not, you're not wondering if you're going to bench any of these guys. You're probably not considering any 1-for-1 trades. So if you're just kind of wondering which one of them to target, or maybe how to price them if you're looking to sell one of them. These are the numbers that I pulled on AB, because when I looked at this question, my instinct was to say no, because that's how
I thought too.
It's probably a different answer every week. I feel like we have this conversation after every game, depending on how they finish. But once I went back and looked at the numbers, he's been consistently great. I don't think that there's a clear-cut number one role in the offense, but he is performing like their best fantasy option. And I think that's the heart of the question here. He's got, in half-point PPR, he's got 72 points on the year, and he's missed the game, and he had that dud in week 2.
Yes.
And that's more than Evans and Godwin, who have
and
not
he's
missed
already
any
put
games.
He's already put up almost as many yards as Evans in just 5 games.
He's averaging almost 3 points more than Evans, who's number 2, and AB has the most weeks so far leading that trio with 3, and the least amount of weeks in last place with 1, and that was that week 2 dud. So
so I guess you could lean him.
Yeah,
but like you said, every week it can change.
Yeah, it can. But I think that if I'm trying to pick and choose which one of those guys I'm going out looking to buy, I don't know if you can buy AB right now, but if you're wondering if you should be paying kind of back end wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 price for him, probably not, because I don't think he's going to reliably perform there. But I would not be afraid to buy him as a solid wide receiver 2 on my team. If I have a need.
Yeah.
he's
Especially in Dynasty, his price is going to be down because of his age.
Yep.
And you can get him. I sold him early this offseason in a rebuild for like a 2nd-round pick in the future. But that's about his going rate.
He was one of those guys who came up a lot in the offseason when people were kind of looking for that big potential value wide receiver who's going in the later rounds, and he eventually crept into kind of the back of the middle rounds. But my answer consistently was I would look at AB. I would look at the guy, and it was always that question on Twitter, like, who's going to finish as a top 10 wide receiver who's being drafted outside of the top, 6 or 7 rounds. And my line of thinking was, well, it's probably the guy who has done it 3 or 4 years in his career and looked great as recently as last year. He's not washed. We saw him last season come into the playbook cold and look great, and he's catching passes from the guy who's considered the greatest of all time. So
who has tried to get him on his team like at every chance he's had. So we should have seen. We know who Tom Brady wants on his team 100%. He wants Antonio Brown. Obviously, he wants everybody wants Godwin and Evans on their team too. But he pulled to get Antonio Brown to the Buccaneers, even after Bruce Arians said he didn't want Antonio Brown on his team.
Yeah, I think we know who's calling the shots over there, and so far it's working. So maybe a career in GMing for Tom Brady when he finally retires at the age of 85. Whatever.
You saw the other day that he said he could probably play till he's about 50 or 55.
I didn't see that, and it doesn't surprise me.
He said I could probably play till I'm 50 or 55. I don't think I will, but I probably could. And I think he will. I think
that's what I was going to say. We have to be past the point now where we roll our eyes at stuff like that, right? Like he has proven to be the exception.
I've already said he could play probably till he's 50 because he doesn't look like he's slowing down in the way that he trains and the way he takes care of his body. It just seems like he could play as long as he wants to play. And I don't think he goes out like Drew Brees went out where he retired because his arm just didn't have it anymore. I think Tom Brady retires when he just is like, I'm done with football. I got 10 rings now, so I filled up both hands. I think I'm done.
Yeah, when we talked earlier about those guys who look special at the level where everybody is special, I think Brady is that in a very different way, which is why I think people kept doubting him for year after year, saying, "Well, time's going to catch you eventually." He's got that kind of 1% of the 1% work ethic, even if he's not the guy out there, setting records in the 40 and throwing the ball, 70 yards. He's the guy who's doing all this stuff between the games that I think keeps him great. And
he actually looks faster than when he came into the league, because moving like
it's
Phillip
impossible
Rivers
to
when he
look
came
slower.
in, and he moves a little bit faster now.
Well, science and technology, medical science has come a long way since he was drafted 40 years ago.
Jesus.
Listen, man, I think we have one more question here in the mailbag to get through, and then we'll maybe take a look back at Thursday night's games. Just a reminder, we got another 10 minutes here. Our phone line is open, 618-FANLINE. If you want to call in and join us, you can do so. I know not a lot of people are asking you to pick up the phone and dial it these days, but this is one of those rare exceptions where you get to kind of dust off the old phone app and use the phone as a phone. In the meantime, Andy in Georgia wants to know, should I trade CeeDee Lamb and Daryl Henderson for Stefan Diggs? Oh, buddy.
No.
What do you got, Craig?
Absolutely not. I don't care if it's redraft. I don't care if it's dynasty. CeeDee Lamb's value is about where Stefan Diggs is in dynasty as we speak anyways. So getting a starting running back on top of that in dynasty is great. And we don't know what Cam Akers is when he comes back. So Darrell Henderson can still kind of keep some of the workload and still be a flex play for you next year, even if he doesn't get all the carries. CeeDee Lamb is actually ranked wide receiver 24 in PPR leagues right now, and Diggs is ranked 26. And I know Stefan Diggs he's amazing, but he hasn't performed like his usual self so far. And getting rid of a starting running back on your team when they're so hard to find and so many are injured, and then I don't think Diggs gives you that much more value over CeeDee Lamb to move Darrell Henderson on top of him.
I agree. It's a hard no for me in every format, especially Dynasty. But,
yes,
redraft, this is the time of season where we really, I think, need to start detaching our opinions of players' values moving forward from the way that we valued them in the offseason. There are extreme cases where I think that happened pretty quickly, like your Allen Robinsons and stuff. People are probably still struggling with that, but Diggs has been quietly disappointing just because that offense has been so good. I don't know that people who don't roster Diggs right now realize the difference in his production from last year, but there's probably not many guys with more upside than Diggs, especially on an offense that's going to be scoring points every week, but that defense in Buffalo is incredible this year. They don't have to put up as many points, I think, as they did in recent past years. But even beyond that, I pulled some year-over-year numbers to really try to figure out where that drop in fantasy points is coming from, because he was not a big touchdown guy over the first half of last season. He's only got one this year, but he only had two after the first 5 games in 2020. So at this point last season, he was second in the entire league in yards, third in catches. He was 36 for 509 yards and 2 touchdowns. And fourth in targets with 51. So this season, he's still top 10 in targets with 47, down from 51. Not a huge difference, but he's outside of the top 15 in catches and yards. So he's 28 catches right now for 374 yards. I think that is really where we're seeing the difference. So again, he was at 509 yards. He's down to 374 right now at this point, year over year. I think he's just not getting those valuable kind of deep catches that he was getting last season. Is that Emmanuel Sanders? What do you think?
I think that it's a combination of the emergence of Dawson Knox and Emmanuel Sanders, because Knox is getting plenty of targets, and so is Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders, to me, is an upgrade from John Brown.
Yeah,
because John Brown's a solid NFL wide receiver, but Emmanuel Sanders, he's performing like he never had an Achilles injury in his whole career. And
and he's not a young dude.
No, he's 32 years old?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think he's about 32. And so you have those two, and then you used to have Cole Beasley eating up a few targets here and there. So, that it just is what it is. Once you get some more decent pass catchers in the offense, and then the running backs have been performing a little bit better than last year as well. So they've been using the run game a little bit, and Zach Moss is catching out the backfield.
Yeah,
So
Zach Moss is
it's-
interesting. He, like I said, that defense looks incredible over there. And if they're not going to have to lean as much on the passing game, I think there's an avenue for Moss to be a contributor. But
yeah,
I don't expect Diggs to bounce back to what he was last season. He's still, there's probably not 4 or 5 guys that you would prefer to have over him rest of the way. Maybe there is, but he's not. I don't think that ceiling is there anymore. He's never going to disappear from their game plan. He's got the potential to win you any week he plays, but I don't think he's worth. I mean, I was just beating the drum for Henderson earlier in the show about a potential, league winner over the second half of the season on that Rams offense. I don't hate trying to move from CeeDee Lamb to Diggs because I am probably a little bit lower on CeeDee Lamb than most people are, just because I think, again, going back to defenses that have improved, the Cowboys, I don't want to say their defense looks
much
great,
better.
but
they went from terrible to average, and that's big enough.
We did some year-over-year stats on the show last year. They were back of the league, probably like 31st, 30th in the league in terms of opponent points scored last year. They're sitting like 15, 16 right now, and that is a huge difference maker when it comes to game script. They're just not throwing the ball the way they had to when Dak was on pace for 4 million yards over the first
888. He was on pace for 888 passes last year. I think through the
that
first 4
checks out,
games.
man. That's why his foot exploded. It just could not handle the pressure of the passing volume.
Just gets like that sometimes.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But look, I just don't think people expected a world this year where the Cowboys could win on okay defense and great running, and we're seeing that happen. So there's going to be the occasional shootout. After week 1 versus the Bucs, I think people expected that to be the norm moving forward, and I don't think we realized just how good. I mean, we knew the Bucs were a great offense, so we're going to get into a shootout, but I think what we're seeing since then is that it was more a product of the Bucs being an exceptional run defense, so they had to go to the air. So it was just kind of a perfect storm, I think. Still love CeeDee Lamb as a high wide receiver 2, low 1 with upside in certain matchups, but I don't think that there is enough of a bump there for Henderson. I mean, I say I don't think. That's probably an understatement. I 100% would not do this trade. So
me neither.
Andy,
I'm not trying to actively move Stefan Diggs, but if somebody came to me with this trade, I would have smash accepted it so fast.
Andy, I hope you didn't pull the trigger yet. I hope you waited it out and are listening to our show right now and saying thank you for saving me from making this deal. If it ends up not working out, if it goes the other direction, we're sorry.
This never happened.
Yeah, but this is why you come here. We're not going to be right every time, but we're going to at least help you put things in context. We have just a few minutes left here. If anybody wants to call in with any last-minute questions, we're at 618 Fanline for probably another 5 minutes. In the meantime, what do you want to do? You want to take a look back at Thursday, talk about some kind of recent developments?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So Thursday saw the Bucs beat the Eagles 28-22. Probably not a huge surprise. But if you were watching that game, I think you're probably a little surprised by the final score. It was not looking like it was going to be as close as it ended up being.
No.
And the Eagles, I think, had an opportunity to win that game kind of in the last few minutes if they made one more stop kind of on that last drive. But didn't happen. Bucs get the W. Let's talk some takeaways from this game. And we'll start on the Eagles side. Dude, Jalen Hurts might be, and this is really where the roads part from good NFL versus good fantasy football. He might be the worst looking great fantasy player of the season so far. Is that a safe assumption?
It's pretty safe. I mean, he had a bad game. The Bucs defense is also really good, though.
Yeah.
But even when he had a bad game, his fantasy points were great. I got him as a starting quarterback in one of my leagues, so I'm loving it. But
I have him in a couple places, and I keep getting texts from my league mates. With third quarter, early fourth quarter, Jalen Hurts has 6-7 points on the board, and they're all like, "Oh, you're nervous, you're worried," and I'm like, "No," because he's just out of nowhere.
Every week.
Yeah, he's gonna put up 20 points in the last few minutes. You're not gonna know how it happened or when it happened, but here he comes.
Yeah, I mean, people were crapping on Matthew Berry for having him on his love list, and he kept having to reply to everybody, and I saw it every time. I'm like, man, people are still giving him stuff. I'm like, he scored over 25 points. Like, what is everybody talking about? He's just a great fantasy quarterback. I think that he's a decent NFL quarterback. I think his offensive line's bad. I think he has Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, and that's about it in the passing game because Jalen Reagor does not look like that guy. Quez Watkins, though,
Dude.
he's been a surprise. Quez Watkins is a good NFL receiver. He might not be a great fantasy asset.
Not yet.
But
he's made some really impressive catches.
That catch he made over that guy, he was pushed a little bit out of bounds. But
that was nuts.
Oh, man. I was getting hyped for it.
He's somebody who might not be on your radar if you're not watching Eagles games because he's not really showing up in the box score yet. But
he will.
He will. Zach Ertz shipped out of town. What do you think of Goddard the rest of the way?
He's probably top 10 tight end easy. I mean, it's not hard to be a top 10 tight end anyways, but
yeah,
like he's definitely going to get the targets. And like I said, it's him, Watkins, and Devontae Smith. And I really just wish that they would get Miles Sanders just a little bit more involved. We saw him actually run pretty well when they handed him the ball against a good Tampa Bay defense, but
he went 9 for 56 in that game.
Yeah, and they just don't utilize him. And I mean, with Hurts being at quarterback, like you said earlier, the rushing quarterbacks kind of open it up for the running backs.
As long as you give the running backs carries.
Yeah, as long as you give them carries, but they just don't. Yeah. I mean, they'll throw out the backfield to Gainwell and stuff, but they just don't give Sanders carries. It's a little frustrating. I don't really own any. I don't have any Sanders shares in Dynasty or anything, or even in redraft. Well, I have one in redraft, but I don't really lean on him. He's kind of been sitting on my bench because they just haven't been utilizing him, even though he's a very talented running back.
Yeah, it is baffling, but it's not new. I mean, we saw this out of Philly last year. I had Miles Sanders everywhere last season, and I learned my lesson. So I was not really pushing him coming into this season. I'm feeling pretty good about that call at this point. Things could change. I just don't see any reason to expect them to. But Jalen Hurts getting it done on the ground still. 10 carries, 44 yards, 2 touchdowns, which kills you as a Miles Sanders manager. Other than that, though, Jalen Hurts, 12 completions, 115 yards, a touchdown and a pick. So not a ton of upside for his pass catchers moving forward, but there's not many of them. So like you said, they should get plenty of target share, I guess, of a small pie.
Yeah. And I mean, they'll probably throw it a little bit more, I would imagine.
I would hope so. They can't throw it much less. No. And they also can't rush much less. So I don't know what they're doing on offense. But
they just don't have any plays, I guess. I guess they're just punting every time.
I guess
first down punts.
Conversely, let's look over at Tampa Bay, who won this game on the back of another pretty good game from Tom Brady, almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. The only reason he didn't score a lot more is because Leonard Fournette carried for 22 times. As I'm reading that, I am surprised about it.
Yes.
81 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looks like the bell cow. What do you make of it? Can we trust that moving forward?
It seems like it. He had a lot of carries last week too, and it seems like they want to ride him. And he also had 6 receptions for 46 yards. So
that is true.
I mean, he's getting a little bit of work in the passing game too, which is surprising because
Gio Bernard
was there, so I don't really know what's going on. Well, but looks like Fournette's their guy, and I'd be looking to try and, if I'm a contender in a dynasty league or something, I'd be looking to try and get him because he's still probably not very expensive because everybody got burnt by him when he got cut by the Jags, and then
I don't think that the community consensus is caught up yet to trust him. I think that they're still looking at Ronald Jones showing up in the box score, but he's not a factor. We're just not seeing it this year.
Yeah, and it's crazy because he's a pretty good running back, Ronald Jones. Like
I agree.
Running the ball, he's very good, and I kind of expected him to get a lot more carries this year, and I was wrong. I was very wrong.
Yeah, Fournette looks great. He's getting the usage. Go out and get him if you can get him for an affordable price. I think you could probably expect running back 2 numbers. Maybe not consistently, but at the end of the year, on a great offense.
Probably finish probably around like RB 17 or so, I would imagine.
Sounds about right. That is not what you drafted him at. So congratulations if you scored him. Speaking of draft day steals, Antonio Brown, 9 for 93 and a touchdown. We talked about this already a little bit. Small kind of day for Mike Evans, 2 for 27. Chris Godwin, 5 for 43. Okay day in PPR. We already kind of discussed what we expect from them moving forward, so no need to rehash it. But don't panic if you're a Mike Evans manager. Don't sell him for cheap. He has these games. You know what you're getting.
He had it the first week, and then he had four great weeks in a row, and then one bad week. It was the week I started. It's because I started him. So, like, next time I want to start him, I'll let the people know. Like, hey, Mike Evans is starting. Make sure you bench him.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And if you could give me a heads up,
Yeah,
I will
I'll
amplify that
you.
message. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
just
huge.
send it out to everybody. Say, hey, Craig's starting Mike Evans. Be ready for a 5-point game.
Yeah, hit the deck. Thanks, man. That'd be really helpful for a lot of us out there in the community. Any other major takeaways from that game before we put a wrap on this episode?
I don't believe so. Brady's still great. That's about it.
Yeah, the GOAT. And, he's been one of those few exceptions, I think, this year to being an elite guy without any kind of rushing floor. He hasn't needed it. He's getting it done with his arm, and there's enough pass-catching talent there where I don't think that this pattern is going away. He is still one of the best there is, and there's nothing we can do at it.
I do have one more, is that O.J. Howard finally showed a little life, and I think that after this game they get a little bit more involved because they were scheming plays for him with his screens. I think he had like 2, maybe 3 screens.
Yeah. What's our timeline on Gronk? What's the latest on him? I don't have that.
They said that he was looking better. I think that he might be ready to go like next week or the week following, which is crazy after a punctured lung and broken ribs. But he's
a different animal, man.
Yeah,
he doesn't heal. He doesn't heal like you and I do. But
no, he doesn't. I tweaked my back and I'm out for like 4 weeks.
Dude, I could have broke a rib when I was 24 and not been ready to go when I turned 30.
Yeah.
Listen, man, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to do this. We booked this ages ago, and I hope we get to do it again in the future. Glad we got a couple of callers. Why don't you take another minute here in our closing moments of the show to plug all of your material and let the people know what you got going on?
Sounds great, man. Yeah, y'all just go check us out on YouTube. We have an Overtime Heroics page, and we do fantasy podcasts, and we do a weekly preview of 3 to 4 games every week. And then you can catch my my articles on www.overtimeheroics.net, and you could see me on my Twitter handle right below right there.
Yeah, for those of you listening on the podcast, that is FF_Schmuck on Twitter. Thanks again, Craig Schmucker, one of my favorite follows on Twitter, as I mentioned earlier.
Thanks, man.
I'm a fan of everybody I bring on this show, so this is as much fun for me as it is for the people who are calling in to pick your brain. And I appreciate your time today, man. This was great.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was a lot of fun.
Well, this was Fantasy Fanline. We will be live again every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern time for the rest of the season. We are back next weekend with Elvin Ryan. That's going to be a fun one. Looking forward to it. Yeah, you should call in, Craig.
I might have to, man.
Please do. If you're listening out there, please subscribe to and stream Fantasy Fanline on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or find us the next day on your favorite podcast platform. We are everywhere at Fantasy Fanline. You can follow us there, or visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of our guests, or to submit a question to our mailbag if you can't join us live. If you like the show, please leave a review, tell a friend, and support us. We do have a Patreon if you'd like to earn some perks and help us keep the phone lines open. Thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you next time on Fantasy Fanline. Goodbye, everybody.
Y'all have a